it is time to go beyond spectacular. Few superhero costumes can rival Spider-Man's iconic design, but he has surely evolved through the years, from his traditional webbed red and blue suit, or was it supposed to be red and black, through all his various incarnations. These creators are some of the most iconic illustrators to bring Peter Parker's stories to life. First up, we have artist and Marvel Entertainment's artistic director, Joe Quesada. Hey, Joe.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Amazing artist of Amazing Spider-Man since 2002, Humberto Ramos. Hey, Humberto.
Hey, how are you guys? Hi.
Good. And artist of Amazing Spider-Man since 1977, including Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut and the Eisner Award-winning Coming Home from 2002, John Romita Jr. Hey, Johnny.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
We're great. All right, so I want to know, for each of you, what is the one thing that you find most distinctive about the design of Spider-Man and particularly drawing him? Joe, why don't you kick us off?
For me, it's always the eyes. It's always Spider-Man's eyes. They're so unbelievably expressive, and I think considering if you put Spider-Man in historical context, the characters that were popular at the time, it was incredibly unique aspect to his costume, to his look, because he was able to emote through the mask, and I think that was the most revolutionary thing. I mean, you see little kids when they see that mask in particular, they freak out over it. There's just something about it. It's magnetic and it draws you in.
Absolutely. I mean, those eyes are iconic. What about you, Umberto?
I had to be agree with Joe. The eyes is the most iconic thing like I find in Spider-Man costume. I actually, I remember when I first start drawing Spider-Man, and I like drawing the chaining shapes in the on the eyes, and I remember having this friendly discussion with one of the most iconic artists in Spider-Man universe ever, and he told me, because he noticed that I did this one with the eyes, and he said, Spider-Man wears a mask, right? That you can't do that. I mean, and my answer to him was, well, we are actually drawing, funny books that they don't actually exist, and then happily, Marvel MCU happened, and they make me write, so I'm so happy for that.
I love that. What about you, Johnny?
The costume that I saw as a kid was embedded in my brain. And I was accepted. I accepted it as that, and couldn't change in any other way to me. And matter of fact, seeing different versions of the costume didn't thrill me as much as I thought they would. I loved the costume, loved the way it was, but I remember the distinction about the character. It was the awkwardness and the way Steve Ditko and then subsequently John Romita Sr. would draw the character was, according to just Stan Lee, this is a different type of a cat. He's not as graceful as other characters. He's awkward. And maybe the conversation about the fact that he was an awkward teenager might have played into it. But the bent legs and the awkwardness compared to a Daredevil per se. And recently somebody went to my son, literally a 25-year-old man, and said, your father draws Spider-Man with really curved legs. That's not right. And my son said, it's a comic book, just like Humberto said. My answer was, that was actually asked for by Stan Lee. It's a distinction. And that's the way I imagine the character and always will. The costume is designed beautifully, genius, but I accept it for the way it is because of what I saw when I was a young guy.
I love that. I love that so much. And yeah, it's comics. It's comics, people. Now, Joe, for you, obviously Steve Ditko has been instrumental in Spider-Man and that initial design. Could you talk a little bit about his style of drawing and how it has impacted the character of Spider-Man on the page?
Well, I think his style of drawing, there's a creepiness to him that's kind of cool, right? There's a very, Johnny and I have talked about this a lot. There's a very, because we both, drawn Spider-Man and Daredevil, and there's a real big distinction between those two characters, even though they both, leap across rooftops and do kind of the same thing with the exception of sticking on walls and webbing. But Daredevil's more of a gymnast, right? And Spider-Man is just this sort of gangly, awkward, bendable kind of figure that is so fun to draw, but both of them take on different aspects. And that's what's fun about the Marvel universe, right? Is just the fact that all these characters have their different attributes if you pay attention and do it right, which Johnny did. I did not. So, but yeah, there's just that, but I will admit that every time I have to draw Spider-Man in the traditional costume, which is also my favorite, I curse Steve Ditko because of that darn webbing. That webbing is just, it's so hard to draw, especially around the mask and neck area. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? When
Yes.
the mask has to meet the costume in the back of the mask. Oh, it's like a math problem. I hate math.
Yeah, allegedly, is it true Spider-Man is the most work to draw? That's kind of what I've heard unilaterally.
No, not for me.
No,
Iron Man. Anybody metallic is hard.
Yeah,
Iron Man.
Actually, Aunt May is a pain in the ass to draw, personally.
Poor Aunt May. Poor Aunt May. Actually, so Johnny, obviously you've had quite an epic legacy here with us over the last 40 years or so. You've been back and forth with Spider-Man, and now you're back once again. You couldn't stay away from Amazing Spider-Man #1 coming in April. We're thrilled to have you back. What keeps bringing you back to this character? I know it's in your blood, but what draws you back?
40 years, did you say? See, I did start when I was 2 years old. Just so you all know, I was drawing early. What draws me back to the character is this is selfish, and I feel bad about this, but it reminds me of family. From the time my father drove my brother and I past a building and pointed and said, "That's where Peter Parker lives." And we were young enough not to understand, but the fact that Spider-Man lived near us, it felt like a family member. And then my father would discuss stories with us and tell us what Stan was doing this morning at the office to describe the plot, because there was no plot. It was a descriptive plot that my father would take notes on. It was so enveloping that there was more to the character than just the physical artwork of the character. It felt like a family member, and that's what I feel like. I think it's the greatest character. Now, it's a reaction to another great character, but a better version. Listen, it was Superman. It's the antithesis to Superman. Newspaper, but and he's red and blue, but he's not perfect. He's imperfect. He gets the snot beat out of him occasionally. He gets a cold. He loses. His costume shrinks in the laundry. This is Stan's antithesis to Superman, and it's more than brilliant. And then to have us know that it was right near us. It was more than just the physical drawings that we saw. This was like a family member. So I feel the same way about wanting to do the character. When I'm asked what I wanted to do coming back to Marvel, I'm sorry, I have to do that character. It's a brilliant character. One of the greatest. It's the greatest character of all time. I can't help it.
I have to agree with you. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's why we're all here tonight, right? Because we love Spider-Man. He is all of us in so many ways. Now, Humberto, you have had a lot of time with Spider-Man. The last decade or so, you've been on Amazing Spider-Man. You've had 20 years of drawing Spider-Man in different iterations. And to that point, you've gotten to design some Spider-Man, some great looks for Peter Parker, and particularly one for Doc Ock when he was the Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah.
For you, what do you think goes into designing a really, truly great Spider-Man costume when you're not drawing that original?
Well, it's hard. When I was asked to redesign Spider-Man costumes, every once in a while, I did the Super Spider-Man ones, and then I did the stealth Spider-Man, the black and green one. But also I have to remember that there's a legacy that I have to respect. I can move forward a little bit or aside from a little bit from the original costume, but I know, or I don't want to move that far away from it. So when I had the chance to redesign the Superior Spider-Man costume, that to me, I think it's one of the best things I've really drawn regarding costumes, and that I went back to some designs that I've seen before I remember this Alex Ross costume he once did for, I think it was for a movie or something, and they never ended up using it. And to me, it was a great design that I could, to take from, and the black eyes and the uneven webbing, that to me, stays again close from the original costume, but far away enough to let us know that this is not the Peter Parker we know, but it's something creepy happening, going on with this new Peter. So to me, it's a lot of fun. It's what can I say? It's my dream job to be able to draw as my day job the hero that I grew up with. So to me, it's all my really golden dream come true.
Hey, listen, this is better than having a real job doing this. I got to tell you, this is a lot of fun.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it sure is. So we have some great questions here from fans that I'm going to read off for you. From Kyle in Virginia, he would like to know, for each of you, what is your favorite Spider-Man costume and why? Joe, why don't we kick off with you?
The original Ditko, where it was black and red. I'm a black and red guy. I don't care what people say. I personally believe that's what it is. And it's really fun. And this is no slight to Humberto or anybody who's ever, I've done redesigns of costumes for Marvel and stuff. But it's funny because with every redesign, it's like, oh, that's cool. It's a cool, interesting take. And you go, original's still the best ever. It's still the best ever,
Heck yeah. What about you, Johnny?
I can't disagree with that. But I have a specific reason. I remember the first time I saw Steve Ditko black out the blue part of the costume, and where you only saw the webbing in a moody panel, and I was locked in. There are great iterations to the costume, brilliant costume designs. But I remember distinctly I don't remember how old I was, but seeing Steve Ditko do that image stuck in my head, and I use it as often as I steal it as often as I can. Rest in peace, Steve. Brilliant. My father stole that and used that idea, and not because he was told to use it, because it's artistically brilliant. That's that costume, and I can't stop thinking about it that way.
Heck yeah. What about you, Humberto?
The red and blue. I mean, to me, it's not only the best Spider-Man costume, ever. I know a lot of people likes the black costume and that, but to me, it's not all. Not only the best Spider-Man costume, but every superhero ever drawn costume. The best one is the red and blue on Spider-Man. I love it. I grew up with it, and as a kid, when you grew up reading these books, the thing about this guy, you can't see any of his body under the costume, and you can relate to that because it can be you. Like they say in the books and in the movies now. It creates a bond, and it's so beautifully designed that, as Joe said, you can try improve something, every once in a while, but still you go back to the original design because it's so good. It's perfect.
I have a question for Joe. Is there any truth to the rumor that Kirby did a preliminary design of the costume before?
I have no idea. That's really more of a question for Tom Brevoort. You know what I mean? I don't know. If he did, I've never seen anything.
I just hear that.
No.
I heard that rumor before, and I may have seen sketches. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Everybody was in the same office from time to time, right? So it wouldn't surprise me if Stan just said, "Hey, Jack, what do you got?" And then but Steve's got his thing, And again, I mean, Ditko could have done that costume and not done. He just come in the red, right, with the black. And why the webbing? The webbing, man, he's killing me.
Yeah.
Just to tire out your fingers there. We have a question here from Lee in Florida who would like to know, do you have any tips for drawing Spider-Man or Spider-Man characters? And which Spider-Man character do you most enjoy drawing? Humberto, why don't you kick us off?
Well, my tip is have fun. I mean, again, it's a lot of work, and to me, the technique on drawing characters, Yeah, well, everybody has a different approach to that. But to me, the thing about drawing Spider-Man and Spider-Man universe's characters is to sit down, have fun, and enjoy the ride. So I would say that. I mean, that's the way I've been doing it for the last 20 years, as you said, and still it's thrilling, to wake up every morning knowing that I'm gonna have to draw a Spider-Man page and bring to people these characters. So to me that would be it. And to me, my favorite character to draw in the Spider-Man universe, I don't know. I like the Green Goblin a lot. Honestly, I enjoy drawing him a lot with this crazy, eyes and smile, and I like him a lot. Yeah,
Yeah, that craggy face. I love it.
yeah.
What about you, Johnny?
The what was the original first question? It was not just the character.
Any tips? Any tips for drawing spider characters, and which is your favorite to draw?
The tip for drawing Spider-Man is to be different and do it differently, because that's the character. There's so much difference in him. Normal kid, a mess up kid that just, he made mistakes, and he made mistakes as a superhero. Again, when the costume shrunk in those early issues, come on, that's brilliant. And then he gets beat up and he gets a cold and his aunt yells at him. That's what the familiarity was. That's what everybody loved about the character. And that's what makes you enjoy the character more, drawing it, because you draw for instance, when I would put him in a room, I would put stuff in my room, in Peter Parker's room, because it looked familiar. Stan Lee once said the balance of fantasy and reality is what makes characters great. He said, you could do 80% reality and you pine for some of the fantasy. And the reverse is also true. When you have a fantastic out of space type of character, you get 80% fantasy and you want a little bit of that reality. Well, with Spider-Man, it's 20% fantasy and 80% reality, but it's the streets of New York where I grew up, Joe grew up. That's putting that in the character is what made the thrill to me. And my favorite character to draw is Mary Jane Watson. There was just something about reading that last page that my father drew. Sorry, I'm a little bit selfish here, but that image of Mary Jane Watson appearing, love drawing that character. Love it, love it, love it. Villain's different, but love drawing that character.
Oh, the best. And what about you, Joe?
My tip for anybody who wants to draw Spider-Man, who's breaking in and really wants to, is just forget don't use photo reference. Don't use photo. You cannot get anyone to pose in a proper Spider-Man pose, but you have to understand anatomy, because it's when you look at a Spider-Man drawing, the way that Johnny or Roberto draw Spider-Man, I mean, joints are dislocated, but they still look like they're connected. They still look like they're plausible. You're catching him in motion. Johnny and I have talked about this at length, that when I was a fan reading Johnny's stuff, yes, Johnny, you are older than me.
That goes my whole night right there.
I was a fan reading Johnny's stuff. I remember in college, I did an animation class, and they were talking about the great Disney animators and how all these animators had an athletic streak through them. They were all good at athletics of some form, whether it was playing baseball or whatever it may be. And that's what made them really understand and it's the fluidity of motion and how characters moved in space. And I realized that was also true in comic books. And I remember reading Johnny's stuff, and I'm like, I bet you this guy played baseball. I could tell by the way the Spider-Man moved, the way the Daredevil moved. They ran, when they ran across the rooftop, you could feel the athleticism. And then later on, we became friends and we discussed this, and it turns out to be true. And by that, I don't mean you have to be a great athlete. I just mean that you have to understand physicality. And I think when you don't, then Spider-Man comes out stiff and sometimes he could look dislocated. Todd McFarlane is a great example of this, right? Todd played baseball. Todd understands athletics, and he was able to bend and twist Spider-Man in insane ways, and yet still make it feel like, I think that could happen. It can't. It really can't. Like the eyes, it can't happen. But he made it. He made you believe that. So that's my tip.
And who is your favorite to draw?
Oh, my favorite villain, man.
Or just your favorite character to draw?
Oh, my favorite. Well, I like drawing.
Of the Spider-Verse, of course.
You know what? He's not part of the Spider-Verse, but I put him in the Spider. I did a story with him, and I love drawing Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. Just something about that. You know, I had a
Ditko's version was fantastic.
Yep, there's both Ditko characters,
commonality.
and very different from each other, but both do this kind of thing, right? So,
good point.
It all flips back around. I would love to listen to you guys tell stories all day long, but I have to release you soon. So let's hit some rapid fire questions. I'm going to throw out a question. You give me your quick answer right off the top of the head, and let's do it. First up, best Spider-Man side character to draw, Joe.
I missed that. Best what?
Best side character to draw from Spider-Man.
Side? You mean like supporting character?
Yeah, like a supporting character.
Oh, Mary Jane, hands down.
Humberto?
Mary Jane.
Johnny?
Mary Jane, and that character is iconic, and it's more than just the vanilla of Gwen. This is a typical, strong, spectacular character, and the way she was created with the history of the character never showing her before, and then the splash, it sticks in your mind. And she's beautiful. I love drawing the character. With the red bangs, something about the red bangs over the forehead there, darling.
You know what? Listen, I'm here hosting tonight for a reason. I know it.
There you go.
I've ended up in this career for a reason, and I know it. It had an impact, I'll tell you. All right, most influential Spider-Man artist to each of you. Humberto.
This is really hard. Well, I have a long list. I can't say just one, but two of them are actually, it's me being lucky today because I'm with these guys. I admire them both.
I don't buy it for a second, but that's beautiful.
I always have, and I always will. So, my personal list is long, but surely it includes these two guys. So thank you.
That's nice.
For inspiring me.
We'll take it.
Thank you, Roberto.
Joe?
As much as Ditko originated all of this stuff, in visually in the Spider-Man universe, Johnny's dad, Mr. Senior Romita, is hands down. He took Spider-Man and made him an icon, visually, right? He took his knowledge of romance comics, and because Spider-Man is, it's got all that drama of romance comics, and he just brought it to life, So to me, there is no one. And I'm sorry, Johnny, you're number 2 on my list, John. You're number 2, but your dad was hands down the greatest Spider-Man artist in the history of Spider-Man.
And now, nice. Johnny, your turn.
It's more than just the Spider-Man stuff that my father did. It enveloped all art, because I watched him draw from the moment. Every time I had a monster under my bed, I would go run up into the attic and I would watch him draw all night long. But when he did the first Daredevil cover, I became attached to comic books, and then he went over to Spider-Man. It sat with me for so long, because it was more than just a comic book. It was the whole city to me. But his art, to me, I even looked at the stuff when he was doing romance comics. He did stuff that he said was based on Leonard Starr's artwork, which was newspaper strip stuff, the beautiful romance stuff. But when he did Spider-Man, it sung to me, and everything he did, I wanted to be like. Unfortunately, in my head, it started out looking like his stuff. By the time it got down to my hand, it was just mine, and it sucked. But my father has influenced me as an artist more on Spider-Man than others, but here it is.
There it is. Oh, thank you all so much for talking.
He's the GOAT.
The GOAT. Thank you to Joe, Johnny, and Humberto. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Pleasure to be on the same panel with you two guys. Thanks.